this episode, I speak with Brielle. She started her birthwork journey, as most young women do, working within the medical model of industrialized birth. Over time, Brielle was able to align to the physiologic and natural way of birth and started stepping into the realm of birthwork outside of the system. Brielle has been on a spiritual journey of growth, not only for herself, but for the women that she supports in birth as she lives in the mountains of Peru at this time. I cannot wait for you to listen to this talk, as it is so eye-opening to anyone who is on the fence about the way they want to support women, and acts as a beautiful reassurance for the women already supporting birth free of the medical system and trusting in a woman's power to birth in her freedom. Please, please take a seat and really listen to Brielle's words as she pulls in ancestral and traditional medicine for the way that she is supporting women throughout birth in her community. Hi, Brielle. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me on this beautiful podcast, Karma. I'm so excited to be
here. I'm so excited to have you here because you are the first woman that I'm actually interviewing now that I'm shifting into interviewing women about doing kind of traditional and ancestral birth work. So this is really exciting for me. And you said, as we were speaking before, that this is your first time chatting on a podcast. So it's both new for us. So I'm really, really excited to get into this and to hear your story, because I know just a few little snippets, but I'd love to go a bit more into depth with you.
Great. What an honor. I'm so looking forward. Let's get into it.
Yeah. Okay. So the first question, the first question that I'd like to ask you is, what is your ancestry and your lineage?
Thank you for asking this question and creating this space for us to call in our ancestry. And I want to speak to the Gullah Geechee people, my indigenous relatives on my father's side, who hail from the Carolina Islands. Very, very, very special beings that through enslavement were able to continue a lot of the African traditions and are still alive today with their own language, with our own language, with our own art and culture and way of being and land even. And so with that comes in the lineage of the granny midwives and my ancestry hailing from that on my father's side. So calling in my beloved grandmother, Susan Summers Irons, to be here right now with us, the granny midwife, the one that guides me. So grateful for her presence and her being. And they're with us here today. And also on my mother's side, Greek and Scottish. And so calling in all of those earth-based indigenous ways of being on the lands of Europe. And just so grateful to be, to be with them. So
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you for inviting them in and to have them in this space so that we can speak more in depth about them and how they influence the work that you do. And as you said, how they guide you through your birth work. That's so beautiful. So thank you for honoring them on your paternal and maternal side. That's really beautiful. So the second question I would love to ask you is, where does your birth work journey begin?
My birthwork journey begins as a very innocent little girl. Innocent little girl in her early 20s. I was in a relationship where I was planning to conceive, and I was in this part of my life where I didn't really know where I was going. I felt like I had a mission, but I didn't really know what my work was. And I was kind of just in this space of liminality within my life. And with my partner, we were planning to have a baby. And so naturally, I didn't really know consciously much about childbirth and pregnancy and all of these things. And so when that portal began to open for me, I naturally began to do research online. And I was on one of these blogs one of these mama blogs one day, and there was a simple ad that came up on the corner of the screen. And it was like, become a doula. And I'm like, what is a doula? And I researched it, and just a light bulb went off. And I was like, oh, this is it. Like something, so simple, but this is it. Like, this is something that I feel is so part of me, and something that, seeing that simple ad on the screen just like woke up something within me. And that was kind of the beginning of like my, like a huge shift in my life, a holistic shift where, I was working in New York City nightlife and having a blast doing that. But, once I said yes to becoming a birth worker, stepping into the world of birth work, slowly things started to trickle and shift in my life. And that was also the time where I met the plants and was beginning to deepen my relationship with the plants. And so it all intertwines, but that's the beginning. And so I started my doula training at a really renowned, or not renowned, but really well-known doula course out of New York. And, that was, very connected to the system and the ways of being in the system. And so innocent and unknowing, that was my, first experience stepping into this work. And, from the bigger picture, it's really beautiful to watch how everything has shifted and how everything has kind of still filtered out and refined itself.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then over the years, I started to take hospital births and birth center births, and then moving over, I moved to California and met a couple midwives who started to shift things for me.
Can I just quickly ask you a question? When you were working, because you were still in New York and you were doing the hospital and birth center births, how, like when you first got into it, how was your feeling of this? Like, were you kind of like, wow, this is beautiful, this is amazing? Or did you kind of have this like feeling in the back of your mind, like, okay, this was okay to experience this, but something wasn't right? Like, what was your kind of energetic feeling towards these births you were seeing in the system, being so new as a doula at the time?
Yeah, my first birth was in a birth center in Brooklyn. And so that birth, the birth was really quick and really fast. And so it was the mother's second birth. And so there wasn't much intervention in that space. And I feel really blessed because in a way, even though there was still, systemic principles involved in that birth, there was still a lot of autonomy for her. So I feel like that was a gift, and that was something that I kind of like look back on. Now, moving forward, as I started to educate myself and become aware of the different things that happen within the hospital setting, I didn't have the conscious language to understand what was happening. But yeah, there was like many experiences, almost every experience that I had in the hospitals, there was a knot in my stomach, just from like experiencing the way that nurses treat pregnant women, and like so many traumatic things. So yeah, I didn't have the language, but yeah, I had the feeling, the somatic feeling.
Yeah. Okay. And then so you moved to California and you were still doing birth work?
Still doing birth work, moved to California and met a couple of midwives who began to show me a little bit. I would still consider them medical midwives, but begin to show me a different way. And a way that was more woman-led, mother-led, mother-centered. And then I took Rochelle Garcia's innate postpartum course.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I absolutely love that course. It was the best thing, changed my whole life.
My life. Exactly. And to experience her fierceness in her way of showing up for mothers, and to learn something, knowledge and wisdom that I didn't have and I didn't know before
Mm-hmm.
completely shifted everything for me. And I began to feel the rage,
Mm-hmm.
the rage of all that I had witnessed and all that the mothers that I supported had experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, and I guess that was the kind of purifying fire that I needed to step into deeper integrity and
Mm-hmm.
women-led service and support. So
Right.
yeah, and then found free birth community and began to just really devote my practice and way of being to yeah,
Right.
autonomy.
So then when you were, or you took the training with Rochelle and you were still taking on births at that time as well, while you were in that
Mhm.
training? Yeah. So then did you start to notice shifting in the way that you were wanting to support women, or shifting in the way that maybe I don't want to go to hospital births anymore, just at home births with medical midwives? And then what was that gradual stepping for you?
Yeah, it was just that. It was, I'm no longer attending hospital births. My last hospital birth was ridiculous.
Mm.
And yeah, so it was a gradual, like, okay, I'm not going to attend hospital births. But then also it's like there was a lot of my own process with that because there's a lot of community members in the birth world who kind of push like, no, we need doulas, we need birth workers in the hospitals because this is where all of the like things are happening. And so like home births are great and like there's a lot of support there, but we need like people in the hospital room. So that was a whole process for me to like kind of decondition myself out of thinking that like my service is like I'm required to be there because in some
Mhm.
way, shape, or form I'm helping this situation. And maybe so, but like, you know, being in spaces like that where we know what's happening is just, we're just complicit to the trauma and the things
Mhm.
that are happening. So it was a deconditioning process. And then I stepped into like, okay, well, I will only attend births with medical midwives or midwives. And now I'm stepping into feeling really good about supporting women who are walking the unassisted path. And so here
Mhm.
we are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. And I just want to make a comment to you, speaking of, having the hospital staff saying, we need these birth workers, we need doulas in the hospital. It does sound really nice, like hearing them say, oh, we need the doulas, we need these young women here to support the mothers to be in the hospital. But you're totally right, because they're asking for these women to come into the hospitals, to be complicit within the violence that's happening, to be complicit within the abuse that's happening to the mothers and babies. And they're like pawning it off on the doulas, making it seem as though, oh, well, it will be okay that we abuse this mother, that we violate this mother, we take away her rights and we separate her from her child because she has a doula that will hold her hand through it. So it's just such like a messed up way that they're not asking to have the doulas in the hospital to make the birth experiences more beautiful for these women per se. They're asking so that they can kind of cover their own ass, and they can kind of get away with
Yeah.
doing all of these horrible things to these mothers, and then having these young women, these young new doulas in the hospital to just take the brunt of all of that, which is so not fair and is just like so messed up.
Exactly. And so that's one coin, but then the other coin is also receiving that from your fellow birth workers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who are really gung ho about being in the hospital settings. And,
Yeah.
you know, that was really hard for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
women that I looked up to in the community who are also BIPOC saying, like speaking to the Black mortality rates and how like doulas can help that. And while I understand that, it still was a whole deconditioning process for me
Yep.
to receive that from my kin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
It's true, and it's like a strange place to be in, standing alongside your sisters that are working in birth work and hearing them, advocate for these women to go into the hospitals, or advocate for these women to have these interventions because it's going to quote unquote save their baby, and having them say like that cesarean section was necessary. You had to go through that trauma so you and your baby could be alive, and just sitting there and thinking, but that's not true. That, and it's, as you said, that other side of the coin, they're so wrapped up and so deep within that systemic conditioning that they can't see it for themselves, which is really sad, that they are the pawn that villainizes the women birthing outside of the system coming free, opposed to, or the birth workers, pardon, that are wanting to work with the mothers that want to birth outside the system. These doulas in hospital villainize them because they think that they're doing something wrong. But it's like,
yeah,
actually, let's put the mirror back onto you and say you're being more complicit to the trauma and the harm that's actually going on to these women, which, like, it's just this whole big heartbreaking mashup of, yeah, it's a lot.
but then also like looking at the experiences that I've had in the hospital and the experiences that I've had in home births, and witnessing myself coming out of those experiences, and kind of reflecting on, okay, how did I feel coming out of this amazing birth that was 3 days long with no interventions and women led and gentle, and where I got to tune into, the realms that are we can't see. How do I feel coming out of an experience like that? What am I taking with me? What did I learn from that experience versus like these experiences in the hospital? And when I started to like balance out, for my own work and for my own, deepening into this path of birth, there was just no question. There was no question about it. And so, yeah, it's a really, really beautiful, beautiful thing. So I'm so happy to be here and to have the wisdom that I do now, to know that where I want to serve is in these spaces, supporting empowerment of women and baby and family.
Yeah, yeah. And that's so beautiful that, I think it is also great that you did get to experience that hospital birth setting, like you said, and the birth center births that you went to, and then seeing these 3-day birth experiences, having you be able to tap into your gifts, having you be able to tap into the wisdom of your elders, as you said before. Like, that's you stepping into your power also, as well as witnessing these mothers stepping into their power, bringing their babies into this world. And that's so, so beautiful. Like, that's what birth work is meant to be. The women in these spaces, whether they're in the supporting role, whether in the guidance role, they're in the role of made into mother or mother into another phase of mothering, we're all meant to be connected and interwoven as we're supporting each other in this and seeing our power grow and flourish in this beautiful, sacred, safe container. So, speaking to that, what was your first birth outside the system experience like? If you want to share on that, I'd love to hear a little bit about that, how it felt for you to really step into that energy.
Yeah. I would love to speak to my first unassisted birth. And that was, yeah, witnessing a mother just fully lead herself, and witnessing myself step into the work of invisibility, visible service. Oh, I'm still integrating it. This is my first time really really speaking aloud about it outside of her and our community. But all I can say a lot, but in this moment, witnessing a woman in that rawness and in that primal power, uninterrupted, and fully in her birth and in the cosmos was otherworldly. And within that space, vision was opened, and silent connection, and just so much love and remembrance. And it just brings back this knowing that was taken from us, you know, this knowing and this trust in what is natural. The words are coming slowly, so be here with me. Thank you. Yeah, this trust in what is natural. It was a process for me. And I remember there was some moments where within my own being, right, I was having to navigate realigning myself with trust for birth and for trust for women and in this way. And I remember sitting in my garden and I'm like watering my plants, and I'm like, I feel this is coming up, and I'm so happy that it's coming up, you know, because this is the work of deconditioning ourselves from these systems and constructs that have been placed upon us. So I'm sitting in my garden, I'm watering my plants, and I'm navigating and feeling somatically these feelings of like finding where I'm not trusting birth, or where I'm not trusting this process. It was really beautiful. I hit that point within my body and I fell to the ground, and I'm looking up at the sky and I'm like, I trust birth. I trust this woman. I trust this path. Like I release all of these conditions. I release all of this. And that for my own work has rippled and continues to ripple to this unwavering trust for women and for women's bodies and for our natural way of birthing. And so being in the birth room with this woman and sitting as a silent witness and seeing her go through all of her beautiful processes and seeing her with her partner and just being a witness is so rewarding. So rewarding. And I just feel like there's no going back now, you know. This we are, and this is the way that I want to support, is by witnessing women come into their own power and their own empowerment, and witnessing babies be birthed in this way, and the difference, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I hope that makes sense. I'm still so integrating.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I totally completely understand where you're coming from, because it's so big. It's such a big, the first one is such a big experience and such a big, like, yeah, it just changes. It shifts everything so dramatically and drastically that, like you said, you can't go back to what you've seen or done, experienced before, because once you step into this space of the realness and the rawness and the trueness of seeing women in their power and being able to be in your power as the silent witness, as you're saying, you can't fall back from that. You can only go forward.
Exactly. And then also just the space that is there to be able to witness the multidimensionality of birth. And, you know, the gift of the birth worker is one of the gifts that we get to receive from these spaces, is to be able to tap into that and to be connected and on those frequencies with the mother. And the space that's created in in freedom in birthing, to experience that and to be there in those realms and to support in those realms is yeah, it's a gift, it's an honor. Truly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, wow. I mean, that family, that mother is just so like, what a treat to have you be there and to be able to witness her and to just sit in, the feet of this woman and watch her in her process. It's like, it's the most beautiful thing ever to see. I just came or I just experienced witnessing another birth last week, and just seeing this mother in her full primal power, and just, yeah, her not being connected to this world, but just, yeah, moving in the way that she needed to move, and vocalizing in the way that she needed to express to step into her way of being and bringing this baby through, and working through what she needed to go through, and stepping into a bit of shadow side and coming into, like, it's the most beautiful dance that can't be replicated, but only witnessed and only just seen and experienced. And yeah, it's absolute, it's magic, it's miracles, it's all of that. It's it's so hard to put in words because it's everything that could possibly be seeing this. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
Yes.
And also, pardon?
Divine portals.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you really get to see like the ley lines between this world and the other world, and yeah, it's really cool. Wow. Wow. So I just wanted to get back to your story then. So, because you're in Peru at the moment. So how did you go from California to Peru to start doing your birth work?
Wow. Well, so I've lived in Peru for the last 2 years, and I came to Peru for the plants and because I really, really, really love the land here and the mountain. I live high in the Andes Mountains in a place called the Sacred Valley of the Incas. And my birth work has been with the community here, and it's been really, really beautiful because the work here is really intentional. It comes when there's deep alignment. And I'm slowly starting to see, which is really beautiful, a lot of the community here beginning to birth babies. So I'm stepping into that role for a lot of my friends and family that are here, supporting them in their births. And that has been wonderful. And very recently, I met a midwife. Her name is Cynthia Ingar, who teaches about the Andean way of midwifery. And so I have been studying with her. She has an altar called the Huachacae Birth Rites, and that has been really, really beautiful. And so I'm just beginning to deepen into Andean traditional midwifery, which is wonderful. It works with the cosmovision of the Andes, which is quite similar to, somewhat similar to North America in regards to different dimensions and directions. And one of the things that I find really fascinating about the Andean way of birthing is they have language for the different dimensions that women traverse during pregnancy, birth, and postpartum.
Wow.
Those dimensions are also they're a part of the Andean cosmovision. So, for instance, the Ukupacha is the lower realms, and this is where they speak to like the postpartum experience. And so there's a lot of content and language that the Peruvian Andean midwives are able to share with their women in regards to how to navigate the labyrinth of postpartum. And also birth. And so, there's multi dimensions, and I can't go into like foliate right now, but just giving you a little bit of
Mm-hmm.
space to kind of imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that has been really beautiful. It's informed a lot of the way that I work and support my mothers now. And it's informed me in having a deeper understanding and compassion and knowledge for the different aspects and layers of pregnancy, birth, and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm deepening into that now and studying that with Cynthia, and that has been so beautiful. And I look forward to visiting the different communities in the higher mountain regions who are still practicing the traditional ways. Unfortunately, here there's a lot of propaganda to go to the hospitals, and
Mm-hmm.
so what we're seeing now here is a lot of the indigenous women here in the communities are feeling safer to go to the hospitals because of what's being put out.
Right.
Um, and so we're seeing the Andean midwifery way, the traditional ways, beginning to yeah, be let go of. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a few organizations here that Cynthia is a part of and that I can share with you after,
Mm-hmm.
that are, yeah, just wanting to re-enliven and support the ongoing practices, the traditional practices that are here,
Mm-hmm.
because they're so beautiful. And so we don't want them to go.
No, and they're so important as well, you know, they really need to hold that tradition in especially places like this, you're way up in the mountains in these small communities. Like we need these traditional ways and these traditional rites and ceremony when it comes to all things, especially for birth, because this is how we bring in those new generations. So it is so sad to see them going. So I'm so happy that you're learning from this midwife and you're taking on this tradition, and you'll be a way shower for the people that you come in contact with, and you'll be able to be a little piece of that thread that's going to help continue on with that tradition, that's going to again help continue on with creating this beautiful world with the next generations of beings.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Mm.
really special. Yeah. So I'm really grateful to be here, and I'm
Mhm.
really grateful to continue learning. And this is my home for now. Like I said, I'm so in love with the land and the culture here. The culture is very rich. They're very connected to the earth. And yeah, many earth-based festivals and traditions still happening here. And so,
Mhm.
and I'm envisioning, I'm so excited, and I'm envisioning, going to South Africa soon and studying the birth traditions that they have there, and stepping into my own ancestral lineage and holding that medicine as well.
Mhm.
So just speaking that prayer and that vision into this space as well, and
Mhm.
knowing that I'm going to get there soon and
Yeah.
studying on those lands.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's so beautiful. And I hope that vision comes forth for you when the time is right. Yeah. I just wanted to ask you, because you said that it was the plants that brought you to Peru. So what specifically are you doing with the plants that brought you there?
Oh, thank you for asking. Um, I am a student of the plants. I work with the medicines of the Amazon
Mm,
in the form of dieting
mm,
with another indigenous community called the Shipibo people of, they originate from the areas of Pucallpa, and they have a really special way of working with the subtle language and relationships with their plants.
mhm,
Call them the master plants. And each plant that they work with supports the healing of different physical ailments, spiritual ailments, energetic ailments, and strengthening. And so I work with the plants in a lot of ways. They inform my entire life, but they really inform my birth work.
mhm,
So I'll go and with my maestras, with my teachers, and be in solitude for a few weeks. And I'll be with one specific plant that they give me, and really in tandem um, with some other psychoactive plants like ayahuasca.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be in solitude, and I'll support and deepen into connection and creating relationship with the spirit of the plant that I'm dieting.
Mm.
And every time I'm in those spaces, the deepening of my understanding of birth and how to be in service to birth is what's really, really present. There's always other prayers and things that come alive within those spaces, but I do feel that the work that I do with the plants in the plant kingdom informs my way of service.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. That's so, I just feel that you're just, right exactly where you need to be. You found your niche, you found the space that you're going to come into so much growth within yourself, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It's already happening. And yeah, you're just right in that beautiful place of your life where everything that the universe, creator, God is meant to give you is just going to start trickling down into your life in these really beautiful ways. So it's really, really, really beautiful to witness this in you, as just as you're speaking about it, you have such a really gentle, kind reverence in the way that you speak about women, the way that you speak about mothers and birth, and even the way that you speak about the plants that you're working with. You can tell that you truly have such a deep love and such a deep sacred connection with this work that you're doing. So yeah, I'm really grateful that I'm able to see this in you. Even though we've just met, it's so beautiful to see this aspect of you already here and now.
Thank you so much for that, Karma. I received that deeply. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I would like to ask you just one more question, because you said at the beginning, as you introduced your elders into the space. So do you know of any like granny midwives that come from your direct line? And have you, I don't know if they're still living or if, you've heard stories of them, but would you mind speaking to that a little bit? Because I find it so fascinating when women have these elders, direct in their line to work from and learn from.
I would love to speak to that. Yes. My grandmother, can I show you a photo?
Absolutely. Yes, please.
Mhm. My grandmother is Susan Summers Irons. This is her. She is the granny midwife in my bloodline.
Wow.
Yeah. She is my 5th generation grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
She was born in the 1800s,
Mm.
and she was a Geechee woman. And our family originates, like I said, from the Carolina Islands. So um, she supported many of the births in the Carolinas. And then we moved over to York, PA, and she supported the births there. And she is, I didn't meet her, I never met her, but she is who guides me in this work.
Okay.
And something really beautiful, as I was doing some research about my family a couple months ago, and this is still new, and I'm so excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing some research about my family a couple months ago, and I found my grandmother's death certificate, and
Oh.
her name before she married into the family was Summers,
Mm.
and my middle name is Summer. And
Wow.
so, and so I called my dad. I'm like, "Did you know this?" He's like, "No, I had no idea." And I'm like, "This is the being and the woman and the grandmother that is in my, I mean, they're all in my bones, but she guides me. She's in my
Yeah.
hand.
Mm-hmm.
She's my eyes. She's my intuition. She's who's
Yeah.
there with."
Yeah. That's the
Yeah.
imprint. That's so beautiful. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. So the ancestor work is alongside the plants, but that's the plants and the ancestors are what it informs my intuition in the birth space.
Mm-hmm.
I'm constantly in communication with them and constantly listening to the wisdom that comes in whispers in those spaces, so that I know how to show up. And time and time and time and time again, I'm shown that when I listen to them, it's magic and it's in full alignment. And I'm just so grateful for the space to be able to speak about this so freely and so openly and be received in that, because I think that it's what informs us. It's our work. The work of the birth workers is this kind of silent, otherworldly, intuitive, and some might say shamanic practice and way of being. And so again, I thank you for being able and willing and open to having this conversation.
Yeah, and I'm grateful that we were able to have this connection, because it's having other women hear stories of, you know, women's journeys into birth work, how they're starting to bring that traditional aspect, that ancestral aspect back into the work of birth, which is so important. And like you're saying, being guided by the plants, listening to the plants to be the way showers for you, how to hold that space for these mothers. That is it. That is the work. That is being able to be fully in yourself, and also using the guidance of the natural world. You know, this is how this was done by your grandmother, who is with you now, showing you the way, how the teachers that you have here in Peru, you know, that is how they've been shown, is by using the natural world to bring us in this physical dimension, but also tether ourselves to the mothers as they're going to the other. And it's so important that people hear that this is what true birth work really is. It's not being in the hospital, charting numbers, taking tests, doing all these things, prepping for surgery, sterilizing, rah, 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 rah. You know, that is a very new world, very colonized way of bringing humans into the world. But the true roots of birth work, the true roots of midwifery, the true roots of bringing mothers and watching them, witnessing them step into their power, is very earth-based, is very shamanic, as you said, because it's all a ceremony, and it's being able to understand and know how we can hold ourselves in our highest honor and our highest good as we witness these mothers walking through this ceremony that they're going through, and being able to see them fully and not interjecting in any way that's going to direct them, but to be there as the silent witness, as you say. I love that. It's so beautiful to be there as the silent witness, and to just usher them through into where they're stepping in their ceremonial, or in their ceremony, pardon. So yeah, wow.
Yeah.
It's
I also just, I urge, you know, any birth worker who's listening to this to really get curious and get imaginative with these words, and allow them to inspire you into your own vision. Because when you're walking this path, you have a gift, and you have a gift of vision, you have the gift of intuition. So I'm just, you know, sending ripples of inspiration out to the ones who are doing this work, to connect in to the vision, to connect in, because it's so rewarding and it's so beautiful, and there's no words that can express and describe what happens in the birth room when you're connected to this
Yeah.
gift. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to make a quick note about, because languaging is so important when we speak about birth and in the birth space. So at the beginning, you did mention that you had gone to, like, when you were speaking of the first birth outside the system that you witnessed, and you called it an unassisted birth. And I really think it's important that myself, all of us as birth workers, we don't refer to it as unassisted, because this way of birth, birthing outside of the system, is the most assisted way of birth possible, because these mothers have the silent witnesses of the women next to them. They have the assistance and the love and support of their partners. They have the assistance, the love, the support, the guidance of their ancestors, you know, whoever is working in that spiritual realm, whoever is working in that realm of the earth, you know. So it's really, it is so assisted with every element that is possibly to be, and on every level and frequency that we're working through. So I just want to make it a note for everyone that's listening that when you're supporting women outside of the medical system, it may be medically unassisted, which is true, but it is like one of the most assisted ways of birth that these women go through. And I think that's really important to state and to note that we need to stop saying, these women are having unassisted births, because they're not, because there's women here that support them, their partners, the angels, the whomever is there, they are assisting themselves. Their highest self is assisting themselves here in this physical plane, in this 3D world. So they couldn't have more assistance in where they're needing to go. Their baby is assisting them. So yeah.
I fully agree with that. Thank you so much for speaking to that. So much.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to share in this journey that you're on, or how you feel about birth, information that you would like to share, or any last words of wisdom?
I feel like I just want to reiterate the relationship to trust, and just sharing a prayer here that birth workers come into and continue to come into and continue to develop new birth workers, seasoned birth workers, everyone that's in this work, to continue to come into deeper trust with themselves and intuition and birth and women, and really holding that for us all. So that's what I want to share.
Wonderful.
Trust your intuition, trust birth, trust women.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah. And if anyone was curious to speak more about birth with you, or about the work that you're doing in Peru, in the mountains, how would women get in contact with you?
I'm beginning to offer online birth education services. So you can reach me on Instagram. I have my personal Instagram, which is Bree Summer, and I'm sure that you'll link it below.
Yep, I'll have it all in the show notes.
And then my birth page is still under construction, but it's Indigo Way Birth, and you can also reach me there as well.
Perfect. Wow, wonderful. Thank you so much, Brielle. It was so wonderful to speak to you and to hear your perspective of birth, and just to see the love emanate from you as you talk about the women you work with and the plants you work with, and where you are in this current place in your life right now. It's very wonderful. So thank you. I'm in deepest gratitude to you.
Thank you, Karma. This was wonderful. Such an honor to be here. And again, just lifting up your vision for this community. I'm here with you every step of the way. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you, sisters, so much for listening to this episode of the Free Birthing in Color podcast. If you'd like to work with me one-on-one in a primal activation session, donate to the podcast, or to have your story featured here or in the blog, go to primalwomanportal.com for all the information to do so. Did you want to connect with our guest speaker? You can find all her information linked within the show notes. And if you have time, please subscribe, write a review, and tell a friend to have a listen, so that this podcast and these stories of women birthing in their total power can be shared far and wide. Don't forget to check out the show notes for information on the Earth Daughters Women's Festival, the Breach Without Borders workshop, and much more. New episodes drop every Thursday morning, so stay tuned for the next amazing story to be shared on any platform that you prefer to listen to your podcasts on, or watch these episodes on the Free Birthing in Color YouTube page. And remember, your voice and your story matters. So if you're a woman of color or an Indigenous woman who's had a wild pregnancy and or birth outside of the medical system, submit your story, because it's so important that your voice is heard and celebrated in your radical journey of pregnancy, birth, and motherhood.